death did not come swiftly. Instead, piece by piece, his body was dismantled before the horrified eyes of Delhi. The air filled with the trumpeting of war elephants and the screams of a doomed man. Bound between enraged elephants, Sultan Khusrau Khan, once the most powerful man in the city, now faced a slow, agonizing execution. Onlookers gasped and recoiled as the first elephant pulled taut the chain wrapped around the Sultan's arm. A wet crack echoed across the plain as his shoulder dislocated, bone snapping like a dry branch. Khusrau's cry of pain was unlike anything the crowd had heard. And that was just the beginning. Khusrau Khan had ruled as Sultan of Delhi for only a few months in 1320, but his short reign shook the empire to its core. Born Hassan, a Hindu from Gujarat enslaved by the Delhi Sultanate, he was forced to convert to Islam as a boy. Rising through the ranks, he became a favorite of Sultan Mubarak Khilji, even rumored to be the Sultan's lover and most trusted general. But ambition and resentment festered in Khusrau's heart. In April 1320, he seized his moment. Khusrau Khan assassinated Sultan Mubarak, slaughtered the royal family, and took the throne for himself. Many in Delhi were stunned. A former slave and a Hindu convert now wore the crown of Islam's mightiest kingdom in India. For devout Muslim nobles, this was an outrage and a betrayal. Yet for the long-oppressed Hindus of the realm, Khusrau's victory was a moment of unexpected hope. Whispers spread that Delhi is Hindu land once more. Under Khusrau's rule, Hindu rites and symbols resurfaced boldly in the capital. Idols were reportedly placed in mosques, and the call to prayer was drowned by temple bells. Cow slaughter was said to be banned. Whether these tales were true or exaggerated propaganda, they inflamed the Muslim elite. Khusrau Khan also sought vengeance for years of humiliation. He hunted down Mubarak's loyalists and had them executed. The teenage princes of the Khilji dynasty were dragged out and beheaded in cold blood. Dozens of palace attendants and nobles who might oppose him were cut down. Perhaps most shocking, Khusrau doled out the harem of the old sultan as prizes to his followers. The wives and daughters of the Khilji household, women of the royal harem, were given away like chattel to Khusrau's chiefly Hindu soldiers. He even claimed Mubarak's chief queen, Devala Devi, as his own wife. These acts horrified many and sealed Khusrau's reputation as a usurper drenched in blood. The nobles of Delhi seethed, their pride and faith deeply wounded. Still, Khusrau's coup had succeeded, for now. He sat on the throne as Sultan Nasir-ud-Din Khusrau Shah, draping himself in silk and gold, determined to legitimize his rule. But outside the city, a storm was brewing. Ghazi Malik, a hardened frontier warlord and governor of Punjab, refused to bow to this upstart. A loyalist of the old dynasty and a devout Muslim, Ghazi Malik, soon to be known as Ghiyath al-Din Tughlaq, swore to avenge the Khiljis and purge Delhi of Khusrau's impurity. Within weeks, he rallied an army and marched on Delhi. Khusrau Khan, hearing of the rebellion, gathered his forces, an eclectic mix of Hindu warriors from Gujarat, the Baradas, and remaining Turkic soldiers. Both sides prepared for a decisive clash that would decide the fate of the Sultanate. The two armies met outside Delhi on the plains of Lahrawat in early September 1320. Khusrau rode into battle atop a mighty war elephant, a towering beast clad in armor. By his side were 10,000 cavalry and lines of infantry, Hindus and Muslims oddly united under his banner. Across the field, Ghazi Malik's forces were smaller but fiercely disciplined and driven by zeal. The battle raged in dust and blood. At first, Khusrau's war elephants and archers wreaked havoc, sending Tughlaq's front lines reeling. Victory seemed within Khusrau's grasp, but at the crucial moment, many of Khusrau's soldiers, perhaps bribed or fearful, lost heart and turned to looting the enemy camp instead of fighting. Sensing opportunity, Ghazi Malik led a desperate counterattack straight at Khusrau himself. Amid the chaos, Khusrau's elephant panicked. The once bold sultan lost his nerve and fled the battlefield, abandoning his army to collapse. His short-lived reign was crumbling in that very instant. In the aftermath, Khusrau Khan became a fugitive. The man who had sat on the throne of Delhi a day before was now hiding for his life. He discarded his royal regalia and tried to disappear among villagers. But there was no escape. A few days later, Ghazi Malik's men hunted him down not far from Delhi. Accounts say Khusrau was found in disguise, perhaps hoping to slip away in the night. Instead, he was dragged out in chains, bruised and disheveled. As they hauled the captive ex-sultan back toward Delhi, crowds gathered along the road. People hurled curses and stones at the man who had dared to rule them for those few tumultuous months. In their eyes, he was a traitor, a murderer, a blasphemer. Now he was about to pay the ultimate price. Ghazi Malik, soon to be Sultan Ghiyath al-Din Tughlaq, had no intention of granting Khusrau Khan a swift death. This execution would be a spectacle of retribution, a warning to any who might follow in Khusrau's footsteps. On a grim afternoon, a grand public darbar, court, was convened on the open plain outside the city, near the palace of Siri. Khusrau Khan, bound in heavy ropes, was brought before a sea of onlookers. Many had never seen a sultan lowered so low, barefoot, bloodied, trembling, about to face torture like a common criminal. Yet Khusrau still had a shred of pride. Witnesses say he held his chin high, even as soldiers tied his limbs with chains. At the edge of the assembly, massive Asian elephants stood waiting, their tusks capped with sharpened iron blades. These were royal war elephants, trained for battle and for execution. Under the hot sun, their mahouts, handlers, kept them calm, awaiting the signal. The new Sultan Tughlaq wanted more than death for Khusrau. He wanted obliteration. With a wave of Tughlaq's hand, the grisly show began. Khusrau Khan was forced to kneel. One of the enormous elephants was prodded forward. The crowd fell into a hushed, terrible silence as the beast approached the condemned man. Khusrau's eyes widened at the sight of the elephant's huge foot, lifting above his legs. The mahout barked a command. In one brutal stomp, the elephant crushed Khusrau's right leg from thigh to shin. Bone splintered and skin burst. A spray of blood stained the grass. Khusrau's scream tore through the silence. He had led armies into battle. He had killed a king with his own hands. But now he screamed like a trapped animal. Some in the audience gasped and covered their faces. Others, especially the nobles who hated Khusrau, watched with grim satisfaction. But that was just the beginning. The executioners were under orders to prolong the agony. As Khusrau writhed, another elephant was brought to bear. This time, they fastened a chain to his arms, one end to each of 2 elephants. At the mahout's signal, the elephants pulled in opposite directions. Khusrau, already delirious with pain, felt his arms jerk taut. His shoulders gave way with wet pops, tendons ripping apart. In a sickening instant, both arms were torn from his body. Blood gushed from the stumps where his arms had been, cascading over the trampled ground. An audible cry of horror rose from parts of the crowd. Even Khusrau's worst enemies blanched at the savagery. The once proud sultan howled and then went deathly pale, shock overtaking him. His severed arms dangled from the elephant's chains, dripping red. The great beasts trumpeted at the smell of blood, pulling back to their handlers with the grisly trophies. And then came the final blow. One elephant, its tusks fitted with those sharp iron blades, charged forward to deliver the coup de grace. With a furious trumpet, it swung its head and gored into Khusrau's belly, the metal-tipped tusk slashing through flesh. In one powerful heave, the elephant disemboweled the fallen sultan. A crimson tide of entrails spilled onto the ground. Khusrau's screams fell silent, replaced by the gasps of the crowd and the panting of the elephants. To finish it, the execution elephant raised its massive foot once more and smashed down on Khusrau's chest and head, crushing the last life out of him. What remained of the man was almost unrecognizable, a mangled, blood-soaked corpse ground into the mud. Blood slicked the field. Even the elephant's feet were stained red up to their ankles. Thus ended Khusrau Khan, in utter humiliation and pain, literally torn apart at the hands, or feet, of war elephants. The spectators stood in stunned silence for a moment, many in sheer disbelief at the brutality they had witnessed. Some vomited or fainted. Others, however, cheered with a morbid fervor, hailing Sultan Tughlaq for avenging the dishonor brought by the rebel. It was as if, by destroying Khusrau so completely, the new regime meant to erase his very memory. To drive the point home, the executioners gathered the severed limbs and head of Khusrau Khan and mounted them on pikes along the road. According to some tales, Tughlaq even had Khusrau's skin peeled off and stuffed with straw to be displayed as a grotesque scarecrow. Whether fact or legend, the message was clear. Anyone who defied the Sultan would face a fate worse than death. In the aftermath, Ghiyath al-Din Tughlaq rode into Delhi as the triumphant new Sultan. He had secured his throne through terror, and for now, the city submitted. The brutal execution of Khusrau Khan sent shockwaves through the populace. No one dared even speak the former sultan's name above a whisper. Parents would hush disobedient children with warnings that the elephants of the sultan would come for them if they misbehaved. The public butchery was meant to be a deterrent, and it worked, at least for a time. There was no uprising to avenge Khusrau. His remaining supporters either fled or were exterminated. The brief dream some Hindus had nurtured of power in Delhi was extinguished in blood. Tughlaq had cemented his rule and restored the old order, and he made sure everyone knew it. Yet, history would prove that violence only begets more violence. Sultan Tughlaq's victory was the beginning of a new dynasty, one that in time became infamous for cruelty of its own. The very son who helped him defeat Khusrau, Prince Jana, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, would later unleash unspeakable tortures on others, even using elephants to execute prisoners in horrific ways. The cycle of brutality continued, as it often does in history's darkest chapters. Khusrau Khan's ghastly end was a warning, but also a symptom of a ruthless era, where rulers believed fear was the only path to control. Reflecting on Khusrau Khan's tale, we are left with unsettling questions. Khusrau was undoubtedly a violent usurper, a murderer who grasped at power through treachery. But the punishment meted out to him was exceptionally savage, even by medieval standards. What does it say about human nature and power that a man can be literally torn limb from limb to make a political point? Was this justice or simply revenge driven by hatred? In the end, Khusrau Khan's fate forces us to confront the terrifying reality of absolute power. Those who wield it often become monsters to destroy monsters. Would you have had the courage to stand up as Khusrau did, knowing the awful price of failure? His story is a grim reminder of how far vengeance can go, and how deep cruelty can cut into the human soul. Thank you for watching and braving this dark journey into history. How does this story make you feel? Let's talk about it in the comments. The fear, the injustice, or anything that struck you. If you found this tale shocking, you're not alone. Until next time, stay safe. And remember the tale of the Sultan who was torn apart by war elephants, a brutal lesson that echoes from the past.